1,600 members of the Philippine and United States military will participate in the annual War Games, which will run until April 28.
This year's Balikatan will be the biggest ever, an indication of the growth of our alliance and how it continues to evolve to meet our shared goals.
This year's Balikatan, we will be doing something different. We will be operating outside our traditional training areas because in this particular iteration, we will be exercising maritime security, maritime domain awareness, and coastal defense. This naturally will make us have to go to the littoral areas because that's the only area where we can test those concepts.
It's really very important that we learn to work with each other, and I think not only on the terms of purely military exercises, because there have also been, on many occasions, the military now is involved in other types of operations, such as humanitarian assistance, disaster, responding to disasters.
We've been doing this for 38 years, every April, and it is a tremendously important chance for us to train together as allies and partners, but it is no way tied to any ongoing tensions.
Balikatan 2023 is in full swing until next week amid concerns of what it could mean to our country's alliances. Of course, China and the US can both read between the lines and get very different messages from military exercises between Filipino and American troops. But more than what our allies think, what do we think? What's in it for the Philippines? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. And welcome to The Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao. Later on, we will be speaking to our guests about the Balikatan exercises. What do we get from these military drills? Also later tonight, we are talking about optional masking and how some local governments are revisiting their mandate as COVID cases slightly rise. Do not miss these conversations, which we'll be bringing to you right after a very short break. So stay with us here in The Chiefs. Welcome back to Chiefs. Let's talk about the Balikatan exercises. And joining us tonight is security analyst Chester Cabalza. He is also the founder of the International Development and Security Cooperation. And he also teaches at the NDCP and I think also at times at the Philippine Public Safety College. Yes. And then also joining us via Zoom is Cagayan Governor Manuel Mamba. Gentlemen, good evening and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Sir Ed, and to Governor Mamba. Sir, I'm from Cagayan.
Yeah. Good evening, and good evening, Ed.
Magandang gabi po. Well, sirs, gentlemen, let me start up with this. Kasi yesterday, si Foreign Secretary Manalo made a point of emphasizing na do not worry daw because any activity ng US that will go beyond Article 1 ng EDCA, which states nga na it's for HADR, humanitarian assistance, and or training purposes, will require the permission and agreement of the Philippine government. Does that, let me start off with you, Governor. Does that in any way assure you about the status of the EDCA?
Well, really, for me, any foreign force stationed here doesn't assure us of anything. Because history will tell us that we were engaged in a war which was not ours because of foreign forces right in our country. And I think any foreign force now in our country will still be seen by their enemies as us harboring their enemy.
Well, Governor, good point po. Actually, we also saw the images coming from Cagayan. I think it was the other night, yung the huge rally that you guys had over there with regard to EDCA. Pero Governor, I also would like to ask you about this kasi I think it was Professor Richard Haydarin who said it to us last week. Ang sabi niya, whether or not there's EDCA there, pag nagkabakbakan sa Taiwan, damay tayo. Dahil because of our proximity doon sa Taiwan and because of the perception that we have always been allies of the US. So ang sabi ni Professor Haydarin noon, EDCA or not, kung magkabakbakan, may papatak sa atin.
Alam mo, this is not World War II anymore. We have smart bombs already. High precision bombing na nangyayari. Alam natin yun, no? When there are no forces on the ground, then mga smart bombs ginagamit nila. And I do not believe, hindi kami naman ganun kasi lapit sa Taiwan. Kung tutuusin, we're about more than 100 nautical miles away from Taiwan, especially mainland Cagayan, no? So I don't believe that. No, I do not agree with that. No, unless may ground forces dito. Wala naman. Kung walang ganun, ay malayo po naman yata yun. That will not happen. Furthermore, kung may mangyari man na ganun, hindi yun yung talaga intention nila. No, still you'll go after the neck and the source. No, but if there are no ground forces here, if there are no armaments here, if there are no nukes here, we will never be tapped.
Prof, let me bring you in.
Yes.
Yung last question yun, let me start off with that with you. Anong tingin niyo? There's that idea na whatever happens, with or without EDCA, kung may bakbakan sa Taiwan, damay-damay na talaga.
Okay, I have three answers right now. No? Unang-una, no? This is a breakthrough for the Philippines to rewrite its own foreign policy. I'll give an example. You know, I'm a fan of Vietnam in terms of how they were able to elevate their country into modernization right now. During their war with France, Ho Chi Minh was saying that the problems that we have, why we lost the war with French, were two things. One is their weak foreign policy, and their ignorance of geopolitical landscape. So they were able to strengthen their foreign policy, rewrite it, and they won the war against the Americans. And they modernized their armed forces. It is one of the most powerful armed forces in the region. So this is what we are trying to do right now. That's the reason why we are transitioning from internal security. We've been doing that internal security operations for 5 decades already, and now we're trying to jump into territorial defense, which is the job of the armed forces as prescribed by our constitution. Secondly, yun yung transition that we are doing right now. Thirdly, when you talk about crisis management, this is not only about natural disasters. You also talk about human-induced disasters or man-made disasters or conflicts. So right now, there's a geopolitical change happening in our own backyard, in my province. So with Governor Mamba in Governor, not only in Cagayan, they identified Isabela and Palawan. So there's a problem right now, an imminent threat right now in the West Philippine Sea and also in Northern Luzon because of the Taiwan problem caused by the China-Taiwan conflict. So that's how I see it basically.
It's interesting you brought up what happened in Vietnam. A lot of people don't know that at the start, Ho Chi Minh was talking to the American government.
Right. Yeah. Diplomacy works. Like, say for example, of course.
I mean, I'm talking about during the war between the Viet Minh and France. Actually, before that, the DEER team, the U.S. DEER team and the OSS were training Ho Chi Minh's men.
Yeah, I agree with you. The same thing as what the Thai diplomats and the king was doing during the Japanese occupation. That's the reason why they were saying that, Thailand was not occupied, when in fact they sacrificed a lot. Thailand was a buffer zone at that time during that conflict. So we're trying our best not to have that miscalculation. Kasi nga ang ayaw naman natin ng giyera. Kasi the war that we will be seeing basically, if in case there would be conflict, it's going to be a war of the rich nations. We're talking about the US and China. These are number 1 and number 2 world economies in our backyard. And then you have Taiwan there, and of course, the Philippines, and of course, ang pang pronta natin dyan yung Cagayan and Batanes,
Yeah.
no? Because of the Bashi Channel. But more than that, one of our national interests is our overseas Filipino workers. We cannot sacrifice them. The mere fact that you had 150 to 200,000 overseas Filipino workers there, that means that we care for them and they are part of our national interest. That makes this complex problem very complicated right now.
Pero Prof, nga, to Governor's point nga, where should Cagayan play in all of this? Well, not just Cagayan, of course, but
Yeah.
Cagayan being the micro of the entire nation.
Right.
Where does Cagayan and the Philippines?
You know, in the framework of national security, local governments, that includes Cagayan, of course, should be part of that national consciousness that we have a national threat right now, and since Cagayan is part of the geography of the Philippines, then it's part of our national security. Then therefore, it's the call of the national government on what kind of foreign policy or security policy that we should subscribe in.
But in the end, dun babagsak yun.
Yes.
Pero paano po yan? I understand in our last discussion with you, ang sabi nga ninyo, you are of course in principle against EDCA, but in the end, you will have to give in. Well, I'm not really clear kung ano po yung magiging role ng LGU when it comes to dealing with the US forces that will be stationed there temporarily. Do you have any plans as to how you plan to deal with their presence there?
Me, I do not know how to go about it. Truth is, how will I go about this? How can I protect my people? We do not have bunkers here. Even our military people here in their headquarters do not even have bunkers. Now, if and when this will break out, what would I do? No, how to feed my people? How to house them? No, hindi ho namin kaya yun. Sa totoo lang, that's why far from our part is how to prepare for a war. Paano na gagawin yan? No? So, I leave it to them. Kung paano na kami papakainin, kung paano kami i-house, no, kung paano poproteksyonin naman yung tao. Kung makakausap ko naman yung mga military men namin dito, ang first na wishlist na, bunker. That means, pati sila, wala silang mga bunkers pa. So, why should we poke our finger into things like this? I think sa akin, this is an avoidable war.
Opo.
No, it's not an impending war for Cagayan, or I don't want to talk about the country, at this point in time, just a governor. But poking your finger into things na ganito, pwede mo na i-avoid muna natin, and let's prepare ourselves for external threat. Because if you talk with our people here, especially our armed forces, they're not even prepared of external threats. So, what should we do at this point in time? Diba? Kukuha pa tayo ng may mga kalaban. No, alam naman natin, no, na kung hindi mo naman pakikialaman yung Taiwan, hindi naman mangyayari yan. Not at this point. And of course, we have always been one China policy tayo mula noon. No, and we always was exposed them na we will have an engagement with China. Diba? Yun yung natin mula noon. That's why yung one China policy. So why confront them now?
Gob, if I may, Gob, I'd like to zoom in dun sa dalawang sites na in-identify dun sa inyong probinsya. One is yung Camilo Ocias sa Santa Ana, and the other, of course, is Lalo Airport. Let me start off with Camilo Ocias. I've been to Santa Ana, but I don't remember having gone to Camilo Ocias. But if you look at it sa Google Maps, parang it's a pretty bare or very simple naval air base so far. What I've been hearing is baka i-develop siya into some sort of a mini Subic kasi you have a small airstrip that may be expanded and you have access to the sea. Pero Gob, from your point of view, kasi kayo yung taga dyan anong tingin yung gagawin sa Camilo Ocias?
Ewan ko, agaperanggot yun, wala yun.
Yun ba yung, yung po ba yung built-up area?
I'm not a military man, no? You stay there, and lately it none. You could not even access the sea with that. Yung sinasabi nilang runway doon, siguro it's a runway for a very, very small plane. And that's just it. And there are people there, ewan ko kung that can still be used for anything, no? For military use, for a naval base, no? Alam niyo naman yung naval base noon. Gagamitin ng sabihin naval base kahit na napakaliit. So, go there, no? And try to see it, no? Kasi I've been there too. Hindi ko nga ma-imagine kung anong gamit nun sa ganitong klaseng giyera.
Kasi yung nakita ko sa paligid ng Cabilo CS, puro mga resort
Right.
Bahay, mga bahay.
Mga bahay din. So, at the very least, I was wondering kung malawak siya enough in the sense na kung mag-expand kasi di ba, the Americans are given authority to expand and construct facilities doon sa kanilang EDCA sites. So, na i-build sa ating mga bases. Pero may spasyo ba?
I think, Ed, we could do that by ourselves. Why get the Americans in to do that for us? No, we've been given a lot of time to do that. Diba? Bakit para tayong, diba, we depend so much on them? Let us be self-reliant on our defense programs. No, bakit sila? Marami rin silang kaaway Diba? Kung tayo lang, at this point in time, wala tayong kaaway.
Pero Gob, is that a deep water port?
It is.
It is?
It is deep.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So
it will be used for submarine and of course the reason it was identified because nagbago kasi yung amphibious kasi yung ating defense system right now. I think that's where they will try to exercise their military strength. And of course, because of its geopolitical reference, it's quite near to Taiwan.
It's
and
around
of course,
600 kilometers.
And also to Japan also. Yeah. So, but
so that's the nearest deep water port, I suppose.
It is, compared to Subic.
Subic, malayo.
Malayo si Subic, no? But of course, I agree to what Governor Mamba there, yung skepticism and predicament to establish that kind of preparations. Because ultimately, as of now, we're all back to basics, and of course, we are still preparing. This is part of preparation. But no one wants war, and tama naman si Governor Mamba dun na why the Americans? It just so happened that we have shared national interest and shared national threats, basically, because they are competing right now with China. And they are willing to shell their investments with us. Remember that the EDCA sites are deemed as economic and security investments. So, meaning to say that they were poor in money. So, it's a mutual, based from the mutual defense treaty that we have with them. No? So, sila yung nagsabi, sila yung nag-open up, sila yung nanligaw sa atin na pwede ba mag-invest kami sa inyo. So, that's why we welcome them. And we thought that what they're saying are it will be down to the interests of the Philippines also, based from the needs of the country right now, in terms of its security and economic investments.
But Prof, a little bit on the operational side. Okay, it's interesting that you point out it's a deep water port. Pati submarines kaya doon. I think that's significant.
Yeah.
Kasi that's so near the Basi Channel. The other thing is in terms of it being an airbase, is it malawak enough for them to bring in heavy aircraft?
I think yung lalo yung mag-aano doon. Lalo airfield yung magki-carry over doon, because of course the mere fact that they if you try to look at it, all services of the armed forces were identified in the three provinces. You have the one in Gamu, Isabela is an army camp. The two sites in Cagayan are naval and airfield. So yun yung pang external talaga, Navy, Air Force. And then the one in Palawan is an island, yung Balabac Island. But if you try to look at it, ang sinasabi rin ng AFP is of course the interoperability. Kasi nga when you invite investors, dapat yung technology mo rin nagsisync in doon sa technology
Yeah.
mo and operations mo, no? But of course, definitely going back to the question, can it accommodate? Basically, that's the reason why they would want to develop it, because right now we see bare facilities there. So we'll see what happens later
Hindi
on.
siya kasing lawak kasi ng, for example, Subic eh.
Right, right. Yung proximity and of course accessibility. That's part of the and of course yung hindi kasi masyado pa na fortify yung northern hemisphere ng Luzon. So lagi West Philippine Sea and then yung Sulu because of the issues on the internal security on terrorism and insurgency. So yung north hindi masyado na pagbigyan ng investments yan.
Well, see, Governor's back, I think. Governor, are you still there? Okay, Governor's
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Sir, Governor, let me ask you one about Lalo. I haven't seen the airstrip kasi. So to begin with, is it a civilian or a military base? Because EDCA is supposed to be on military bases. Eh. Is it privately owned or publicly owned? And exactly how big is it?
This is private, no?
It's private.
It's owned by a consortium of locators of CESA and partly CESA. That's what I know about this. Then hindi kasi nagki-click ito kasi walang passenger ship, no? Even local or domestic passenger ship, wala. So wala. And then I think it was offered to the Air Force just lately. Kaya meron na yatang pinapagawang mga hangar and something
Yes,
like
sir.
that.
I saw some photos. May ammunition bunker ata na binibuild na doon eh.
Yeah.
Pero sir, going to that question, sir. So are you saying it's privately owned to begin with? And in which
Yeah.
case is it possible for it to be an EDCA site?
I don't know. No, I don't know. Kasi ang alam ko dyan, pag-aari ng consortium of locators yan. Nung hindi nag-click yung CESA doon at nagkaroon sila ng mga online gaming doon at may mga ang players nila ay foreigners. So siguro yun yung pinagplanuhan nila dyan. But hindi nga nag-ooperate commercially kung tutuusin. And then suddenly, nai-offer yasa sa Air Force. Gano'n. And then, ewan ko kung anong, kasi hindi naman wala naman kami kasi-say sa CESA dyan.
But that's interesting, Prof.
Yeah, for me, I think the state, no, I mean the Philippine government has exercised its police power. Kasi minsan nasa kapangyarihan ng ating gobyerno ang bansa natin to identify. And it just so happened that you have a facility right now, although of course no, it's my first time to know that it's a private property. Then it's the government's prerogative. No?
That's expropriation.
Yeah, expropriation basically.
Sir, madugo yun, sir.
So tingnan natin kung ano. But I don't know the real intent of that. But amongst all the camps identified and the island yung Balabak, mukha nga si Lalo is kakaiba, no? Because it's an airfield and it's a private property. So it's a consortium. So we'll see what happens. I don't know the real intent why they have chosen that.
But if that were the case, Governor and Prof, if that were the case, if it really is private, what's the likelihood or what's the possibility that the owners will eventually say, teka, amin yan.
Well, it's part
Kung
of
ano na nakatayo dyan, amin yan.
well, the intent is to develop it, no? Because of course, no, the banner is to develop these EDCA sites as economic and security investments. So therefore, there will be influx of developments that we will be seeing, hopefully, with the guidance of course of our good governor.
Gov, yung Lalo po, Gov, how big is it? Is that area? Is it like something like a Clark in terms of size, or is it something like a I don't know, Sangli?
No, I think about 200 hectares to rin.
Malaki rin.
Malaki rin.
So malaki-laki rin, sir.
200 hectares, mga ganun. Kasi ang international airport should be at least 200 hectares.
And as it is, sir, the airstrip there, is it a I don't know, is it a decent airstrip as in walang overgrowth, walang mga halaman sa gitna?
Wala naman. Pero nagka-problema noon yan kasi na-flood noon. There was a time na flooded yung airport, yan, buong strip ng airport.
You mean, sir, is it a low-lying area?
siguro may problema sa drainage lang. Kung may drainage siya. Kasi that area was newly opened yun. And there are areas dyan na talagang during rainy season, panay tubig ang makikita mo in some areas.
And also, it's a historical town, no? Lalo used to be the capital of Cagayan, Nueva Segovia, no? So talagang strategic. The reasons why the Americans came to the Philippines, actually, because they wanted to trade with China. So makita mo yung geostrategic importance din of the town and of the province.
And there's also irony, yeah?
Yeah.
There's also irony in that history.
Yeah. Well, si Governor ang makakapagsabi ng mga resources and historical importance ng probinsya namin.
Well, we do have a lot of resources, especially now, no, with the economic boom of the world in Northeast Asia, and especially with the growth of China. That is why should we quarrel with them?
Well, sirs, ano po I was watching last night the Senate hearing on EDCA at ginigrill kagabi si Defense Secretary Carlito Galvez, as well as of course si Secretary Manalo nga. Ang lumalabas kasi, at least dun as far as the grilling was concerned ng senators, was that the question was being asked na are the EDCA sites, is the EDCA itself, is it for our benefit or for the benefit of the Americans? Now, of course, we don't approach this naman from a naive point of view na, in the end, countries don't really do things out of a sense of altruism. It's because of their own national interests. That's why they engage with other countries. How should we view EDCA? If you think about that, how should we be viewing EDCA? Is it for the Philippines? Is it for the US? Or is it for mutual benefit? And in which case, is it for mutual benefit?
Should I start or si Governor muna?
Let's start with Gob. Baka mamaya mawala ulit si Gob eh.
Well, it should be for our benefit because, being a neighbor of the biggest economies of Asia now, China, Japan, and Korea, we should have friendly relations with them. Now, if somebody comes in that would not nurture that relationship, then it is not to our benefit. It is only to the benefit of the one coming in outside of. So that's how I look at it. No? And that is why, if it just be among us, I believe that it is to the benefit of our country, especially of Qatar.
Prof.
Okay, for me, I agree with the good governor, that it should redound to the benefit of the Filipinos and of the Philippines. But we should not be ignorant of the geopolitical changes right now. We have to understand that there is an ongoing power competition between China and the US. So I mean to say that China is also preparing. And they are reacting to these biggest military exercises mounted by the Philippines and the United States. So meaning to say that these countries are preparing for any eventuality. As much as possible, we don't want that miscalculation because we saw that during the Russia-Ukraine war. There were predictions that there would be war. Western European were in denial that they were saying Putin will not wage war with Ukraine. But one day they woke up that they saw Putin already invading Ukraine. So we don't want that to happen. That's the reason why we are simulating it, exercising. And of course, we want to exhaust all diplomatic means because ultimately we want prosperity in our region.
So, Prof, I get what you mean. It's a chance for our armed forces to learn the ropes of modern conventional warfare. For the first time, we're being allowed to use a javelin, which is hugely expensive. I think mga 13 million pesos per pop, or up to 20 pa nga per missile. And I saw a video yesterday of the Stinger being used by Philippine Marines, at least training Stingers. So it's our first time to do that. But at the same time, would it also be accurate to say that it's more or less coincidental that we're just having these EDCA sites near to Taiwan than they are to the West Philippine Sea?
Right, because of the Si Governor mo.
Ay, Gob, sige po.
Yeah. If you are the number one manufacturing country in the world, and you supply practically everything the world needs, and if you import most of your food and your raw materials and your fuel, will you promote war? And if your growth has always been unprecedented and growing up to now, will you promote war? Of course, you have to defend what you have gained, but you would promote war. Ang dami mong binibenta sa buong mundo, ang dami mong minamafacture. Lahat ng kailangan mo, ng raw materials mo, kailangan kunin mo sa kanila. Ang fuel mo, kailangan kunin mo sa kanila. No? Ang pagkain mo, hindi ka self-sufficient. Will you be promoting war? Diba? So, that's the least na gusto ng China at this point in time. Diba? So, bakit ka? Natural lang yan. Laki-laki mo. Siyempre, meron kang armed forces din na malaki. Diba? That's 1.3 billion people that you have to feed. 1.3 billion working, who would want better lives also. And all of their needs, practically is also imported. But they have their wares also to supply to the whole world. So, the least na gagawin mo, makikipagyera at pagpromote ng gyera. And that is why, let us take time to prepare our defenses by ourselves. Diba? Gusto mo pala yung Vietnam, diba? Let us do it by ourselves. Huwag na yung iba pa para hindi tayo nadadamay sa kanilang mga problema at sa kanilang mga kalaban. Dahil yung kalaban nila, magiging kalaban natin. Wala naman tayong kalaban at this point in time in our history.
But Gob, let me squeeze in a question for you. Hypothetically lang po, hypothetically. If the EDCA site that was chosen was, for example, in Ilocos, what would you think about that? If it was in Ilocos or Pangasinan or Zambales?
You know, I would think that there are more of the boundary dispute. No? Dahil nandyan yung 9-dash line, wala naman dito sa amin. But when it goes to us here in the north, Ilocos and Cagayan, medyo iba na yan, Taiwan na yan, Guerra yan. No, kasi sa akin, we had this problem 9 years ago. That's why we had the EDCA sites.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the West Philippine Sea.
Did we spark war? Was there anyone who died from it? Was there anyone who was hurt from it? No one. So 9 long years, kaya natin yan, na-manage natin yan. Especially now, no? And there was disagreement then because we wanted multilateral, China wanted bilateral talks. Now, our president went to China and I lauded him for it. I really wanted what he wanted to when he talked with China to have continuous dialogue over all of these maritime disputes that we had. Umatras tayo ng konti. And that is why, ibang takte ito, ibang direction ito. And I believe that this would promote better relationship among us here in Asia. And that is why I subscribe to that. Mag-emphasize ka na yan, tama na yan. Bakit mo pa gagawa ng additional that will spark something na baka hindi natin kayang i-manage, diba? And that might hurt us at this point in time where we are not prepared. Mahirap tayo sa Cagayan, Mr. Cabalsa. Ang unang iniisip natin, yung laman ng tiyan natin, hindi gyera. Iisipin natin ang gyera pag-prepare natin. Pero let's prepare it by ourselves na hindi tayo nasasali sa away ng may ibang bansa. Bakit tayo sasali dyan, Mr. Cabalsa? You try to live here and kita nyo kung kaya nyo yan.
Prof.
Ako, I don't promote any war. I'm quite sure China and US don't want war also. Lalo na ang Pilipinas kasi hindi naman tayo ganung kayamang bansa. Ang sinasabi ko lang dito is we need to prepare for any eventuality. Because we
who's
cannot
not
predict.
prepared?
No? Wars
Who's
cannot be
prepared?
predicted. No? Because there's human factor there.
Sino ba hindi nagpre-prepare ng war? We've been fighting our own wars here with the NPAs. Since I was mayor up to now. No. I've always been preparing for this. Ayaw ho namin lahat to. Alam namin ang nangyayari. Kayo mga bata pa kayo, hindi nyo alam ang hirap. Sa totoo lang. No, but we could go through this na hindi tayo masasaktan. No? Lalong lang, you know, Mr. Cabalsa, sabihin ko lang sa'yo.
Yeah, I do understand you, Gov.
When China opened up, we closed. That's why we're not part of the growth of our neighbors. That is why we want to engage with them. Because they will be our biggest markets. Hindi nyo ata alam na ang bulang mo lumalabas lang sa Cagayan ay rice and corn lang. Gandun na lang ba tayo? Because our port of Aparri has closed. Now is our time to open also and have exchanges with our neighbors. And this is our time. Hindi nyo yata alam yung nangyari sa ating probinsya. That we have never been connected to the world because our leaders didn't want to. Bulsa lang nila yung tinitignan nila. Ngayon, at nakikita natin at ngayon pa huwag na yun.
Well, Gov, in fairness naman, Gov, si Professor Cabalsa has been in discussions with senior military and police officials in the security sector. So he's looking at it from all points of view.
Right. I agree with that, Sir Edo. Yung punto lang dito is the transition of the military from internal security. Alam ko yung sinasabi, naiintindihan ko yung sinasabi ni Governor yung sa kanyang sentimento on how they fought on the internal security, lalo-lalo na yung insurgency natin to. But let's give a chance to the AFP also, to the military, to do their job based from what is prescribed in the Constitution. Sinasabi kasi dito na ang trabaho talaga ng AFP is external defense, yung territorial defense. No? We're not saying that once we develop and nurture our territorial defense, makikipagyera na tayo. No, it just so happened that we need to invest. Remember that military modernization is a public investment. That is a fact. Pera natin yun. We are using our money. It just so happened that we have to identify specific locations, and Cagayan is one of those that we think should be invested with economic and security developments.
Pero Prof, I'll go back to that question kanina nga. Is it just coincidence na in trying to develop the AFP's capability, napili yung nasa northern provinces?
Sa aking pag-aaral at nakita ko sa mga pagsusulat ng ating mga military students, senior military students, prior to the EDCA sites, talaga namang ine-expand na ng ating military yung kanilang mga bases. Because nagbago kasi yung mundo. You have now cyber security. Wala pa yung China-US competition. Balak na talaga nilang mag-expand. It just so happened that right now, there is a need right now because of the current situation. Then, dun na naibuhos. No? I'm not saying that they were eyeing Cagayan just because of the EDCA sites. I think they eyed these provinces and regions, particularly northern Philippines, kasi nga kulang yung depensa natin dito. It's not because of the China-Taiwan problem or competition or conflict. It just so happened that we need to put a fortress to that region. Kasi napaka-importante ng ating rehiyon, lalo-lalo sa norte.
Gov, can you hear us? Gov, we're almost out of time. I'd like to allow you a chance to make a statement to the government and to the public as far as EDCA is concerned with the most recent developments in EDCA and the Senate hearings in EDCA and the inevitability, I suppose, of EDCA. Ano hong gusto nyo iparating o ipabot?
Well, miracles do happen. Prayers could be answered. No? And our call is no EDCA sites in Cagayan. We feel that this is counterproductive to our interests. And we feel that poking our fingers into the wars of the big nations would push us into harm's way. And that is why, if we don't poke our fingers into this, we will have all the time to strengthen ourselves, capacitate ourselves. We will have all the time to be as wealthy as them, and maybe later on, no? Prepare for war, prepare for armaments, prepare for your defense. But for now, let us prepare for our stomachs to fill the empty stomachs of the Cagayans. Yun lang po ang aming pakiusap.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Cagayan Governor Manuel Mamba. Sir, thank you for joining us tonight. Professor, if you don't mind, can you say a bit? Thank you, Governor. We'll just ask Professor Cabasa muna about another topic altogether. Quickly lang, yung pag-amin ng CPP-NPA na ang Chamson couple ay pumanaw na.
Yeah.
Ano epekto nito doon sa sa kaliwa?
Well, of course, no. The Chamson couple, no, they are regarded as the last vanguard of our issue when it comes to insurgency in the Philippines, no. But nonetheless, I hope the military, the armed forces, will not take this as a sign of their overconfidence of the status of the insurgency situation in the country right now, especially that they are transitioning from internal security operations to territorial defense. Let's consider this as a sign that perhaps our issues and problems when it comes to insurgency should be relegated already to the PNP, and hopefully the armed forces will focus to territorial defense.
Sabi nyo, cambio na.
Cambio na muna.
Pero sir, even before we get there, anong epekto nito? They're the old guard.
Yeah. Ang epekto
sino pa
nito,
natitira?
Yung pinaglalaban ng mga old guard, dahil nga nagbabago na yung pananaw, ideology, and of course pakikibaka ng left, it will definitely subside, no, in terms of the strength of ideology of this group of people. But ang gusto natin makita sana is maging maayos na yung bansa natin. Wag na sana lumala pa yung insurgency problem natin, because of course it's a competition of ideologies. No, we hope that it will end there, and ang pakikipaglaban natin ngayon is about our national interest.
But let me put it this way, is it a fatal blow? Considering you don't have Joma anymore?
Yes.
And then you have the Chamson couples gone.
Yes, definitely. It's a fatal blow for the left, I think, especially that, of course, these are the major figures in their revolution or in their cause, basically.
But is there anybody else who has a stature to continue or to take over?
As of now, wala akong nakikita. No? Wala akong nakikita, but of course, there are different organizations trying to reconfigure what they wanted in terms of their causes. But for me, as a analyst of security, I see it as a major blow, basically, for our internal security operations.
So much more we want to talk to you about with regard to that and internal security, but we'll park that for a future episode.
Thank you very
But we'd like to say thank you to Professor Chester Cabaza, a security expert and a teacher
Thank you,
of
sir.
many people in the security services. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Maraming salamat po.
And next, let's discuss a slight rise in the cases of COVID infections. Is it time to make the wearing of masks mandatory again? We will have the conversation after this short break, so please stay with us. Welcome back to the Chiefs. As promised, let's talk about revisiting the mask mandate and amid increasing COVID cases with, of course, Dr. Kongki Lim Quizon. She's the director of the South Asia Field Epidemiology and Technology Network. Magandang gabi, Doc, and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Magandang gabi, Ed, at magandang gabi, Pilipinas.
Sabi nga ninyo doon kanina, pag kayo na-i-invite, parang problema kagad ang naiisip ng mga tao.
Oo. Wala pa naman tayong problema sa ngayon, pero ang pinasasalamat natin, mukhang umaandar ng husto ang ating surveillance system such that, we are kept abreast of the number of cases, the increasing or the decreasing number of cases.
Doc, well, just for context po, no? So, mukhang the numbers have gone up ng positive, pero not necessarily yung na-hospital o yung na-ICU.
That's correct. And as far as I'm concerned, they have not yet declared whether it's a new variant or yung dating variant na Omicron na alam naman nating mercifully, it is not as deadly as, say, the Delta variant from before.
So Doc, in aggregate terms, bale, when you look at the numbers, is there any reason to be concerned so far?
So far, it's still do sa expected number of cases because, alam naman natin from the start na it looks like magiging endemic. Pag sinabing endemic, yung nandito na sa atin yan. Aasahan mo na every now and then may mga cases, yung ganon. So if something is endemic, then meron tayong inaasahan na normal, within normal number pa yan. Hindi pa naman yung talagang paputok na, although nag-i-increase. Yeah.
Although there are LGUs units that have raised the red flag. For example, yung Manila is considering returning yung mask mandate. Of course, wala pang desisyon. Pero nagbabanta na si Mayor Hanilacunan na baka ibalik niya kung tumaas pa. Although hindi siya nag-set ng hindi naman siya nag-set ng cut-off ng numbers. Yung Iloilo, on the other hand, has already required the use of face mask among LGU employees. Do you see any value in that?
Yes, definitely. The thing is, we don't need our LGUs. We don't need our national government also to tell us na it's time to protect ourselves. We had 2 years na ulitan-kulitan on how to protect ourselves. Ngayon, pag nakikita natin na sinasabi naman na, oy, mukhang dumadami yung kaso, kailangan ba nasabihan tayo na mandated dapat? Hindi ba dapat on our own? Umpisahan na nating protektahan ang sarili natin.
Kayo, Doc, nagmamask pa rin ba kayo? Kung wala kayo sa bahay?
Yes. Actually, parang automatic na kasi. In fact, even sa car, when I am with my own husband or children, parang napaka-hysterical naman ng nanay natin. Bakit tayo lang dito nakamask pa rin? Kasi parang nakagawian na yung paglalabas, magmamask. And just to tell you, Ed, because I've been traveling since na-allow na naman tayo mag-travel. Sa Europe and elsewhere, wala na halos, as in wala. No? And I feel na ako may sakit dahil I continue to wear mask. However, it was a pleasant surprise to me having attended the meeting in Taiwan just last week that the mandate hasn't been lifted sa Taiwan. They are supposed to lift it sa May 1 pa. And sa Japan is sa May 8. So it's not as if, I remember when the government was considering to lift it already so many months back, some people were saying, tayo na lang ang nagmamask Hindi pala totoo. Dahil itong ang Taiwan, sa May 1 pa at ang Japan, sa May 8 pa magtatanggal.
Pero Doc, I get the impression na kayo na lang sa bahay niyo nagmamask kasi sabi nga ninyo, yung asawa niyo at yung mga anak niyo parang napapansin sa inyo.
Ako na lang naman ang lumalabas sa bahay They don't usually do, di ba? Good answer. Yeah, so they don't usually do that.
Yeah. Actually, I suppose yung talagang value ng mask is for you not to infect other people if you do have the virus. It's parang you're being considerate of the health of other people.
Both ways. You're being totally considerate when you feel something wrong and then you wear a mask, right? But also for your benefit, so that you don't get anything from when you go out. You might catch something. It may not necessarily be COVID, but it could be something or the other.
Yeah, but Doc, it's one thing to have voluntary masking. In your case, for example, in the case of many Filipinos, voluntary masking yan. It's another altogether if LGUs decide na let's go back to mandatory. So I'll go back to that question. Is there any value in imposing a mandatory masking?
Yes, for me, yes. If the metrics will tell us that in fact it's time. Remember that the lifting of the mask initially, how many months ago, was based on yung metrics natin, yung sinusukat natin, a number of cases, reproductive rate, and so on and so forth, di ba? So first of all, it needs to be warranted. It needs to be evidence-based na talagang oras na. Kasi meron naman nilagay ang DOH na pamamaraan para sukatin kung kailangan nang mag-mask or hindi.
Pero when you talk about metrics, ano yung cut-off o ano yung trigger numbers, if that's the way to put it,
Right.
for anybody to call for mandatory masking.
Oo. Nakukwenta kasi, I told you for something that, for any disease that is here with us, meron tayong specific number na alam nating over and above that, dapat nang mag-alarm, you know. So, iba-ibang, based on whatever yung mga nireport nilang kaso in the past 2 years, dahil may surveillance system naman yung mga probinsya natin, alam nila kung ano yung cut-off. I am not one to say pagka 10% more than usual or 20% more than usual. It's really up to what was the baseline numbers of those LGUs in the past 2 years.
Doc Conky, cambio naman ako. I'll go into vaccination. Of course, our booster numbers weren't particularly good. If I recall correctly, we were way off target pa. Now we're going into second booster shots for the general population. Do you think it will be any better?
First of all, yun na nga, hindi man nga nag-first booster yung iba, how can we even go to second booster? Maybe the important thing is that the government continues to make those things available to us. While at present, hindi natin sila mapilit. At least sa mga may gusto, andyan yan. Hindi katulad dati na noong umpisa na agawan tayo dahil hindi sapat. Ang importante lang is meron. So please, doon sa mga, meron naman wala na tayo dapat talagang dahilan not to go for the booster shots.
Ako, Doc, I'm planning to get my second booster shot na. Finally kasi, ngayon lang nag-open up But anyway, yung bivalent vaccines that everybody's been talking about, they might, but it's still a might. They might be offering it by the second half of the year because of some legal problems. Do you think that would change the equation when they finally offer bivalent vaccines in the Philippines? Would more people get booster shots when it's bivalent already?
Yeah. Well, first of all, hindi ko alam kung yung bivalent pwede na sa general population kasi yung mga initial studies para karamihan para doon sa mga younger age group. Be that as it may, kung pwede na para sa population, maybe magkakaroon ng more kumpiyansa ang general public to go for it because it will give us more protection for variants. Because one of the reasons why the public seems to be hesitant is because wala tayong may offer. Hindi natin masabi kung sigurado tayo once a year lang ang booster. Di ba hindi natin masabi kung minsan sabi after 6 months sige daw o kaya ibang variant kasi so sige na naman. So parang ano ba sinasabi nyo? So the others, many of us are actually saying at the moment, because it's peacetime, protektado tayo, okay na to. Hindi tayo nagkaka-COVID, which of course is not true. But since in the absence of pwede nating sabihin sa kanila, unequivocally na mas malaki ang protection, go for it, siguro yung offer ng bivalent would be better accepted by the general public.
Yeah. Pero Doc, ang sakit niyo magsalita. Sabi niyo pang younger pang younger age lamang tong bivalent.
Sorry. When I say younger, pediatric age group.
So mukhang yun ang pa-prioritize again.
I have no idea muna dito kung ano, but based on your studies abroad, yung that was how many months ago, ang sinasabi nila, ang bivalent is para nga doon sa pediatric age group.
Okay. And
yun ang unang prioritize.
And then kanina you were talking about yung COVID-19 eventually becoming endemic. I know we've tossed that word around so many times in the last 2 years or 3 years. By when?
For me, and this is personal as an epidemiologist, I think it's not going to go away. It's going to be here, and it's already
never going
here.
away.
Yeah, and the reason why it looks like it went away for a while was because we were relaxed na hindi na tayo nagpapatest. Pero I'm sure kung Eh hindi na nga nagpapatest ang karamihan and yet araw-araw may nare-report na bago. Hindi ba? Pero kung mas prudent tayo sa pagpapatest katulad ng nung first year natin, I assure you there will be plenty more which will just prove to us that it never went away.
Okay.
Right? Pero ang importante is that hindi ma-overwhelm ang hospital system natin, you know, and that the mortalities are kept very low.
Yes, ma'am. Doc, I think that's well, those are the new metrics that we started looking at when we started talking to you experts. Kasi in the past, kasi we'd only look at the new cases, not necessarily yung hospitalizations and yung mortalities, which apparently is more important. Anyway, maraming salamat, Doc Conky Lim Quizon. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Ma'am, ingat palate.
Likewise, Ed.
And that's it for the Chiefs. We hope our discussion will keep the conversation going. I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.